This is Ken Paxton here on the right. He's the Attorney General of Texas and about as corrupt as they come. He is suing a Christian ministry that helps homeless people. You cannot make this up. Let me just introduce you to Ken Paxton. Just listen to this clip. This one was from late November 2023. Media Matters is a small media organization. I guess kind of like me, just kind of a small independent media, whatever. They were reporting on Ken Paxton, and he didn't like the fact that they were reporting on him. He faced impeachment by his own party because he's getting drunk while on the, I don't know where, while at work. I don't know where the secretary, or I'm sorry, I don't know where the attorney general works. Like, where's his office? Is it in the governor's office or is it at the state Congress? I'm not sure, but he was getting drunk there is the problem. And he was paying a bunch of people bribes and things. I mean, it was really bad. The Republicans in Texas impeached him, and it didn't work because Trump came out in his favor, and there's a massive pressure campaign to save his career, and he was acquitted. And we'll talk about the impeachment in a minute, but after all of that happened, Media Matters is reporting on it, and he says that he's going to punish Media Matters for that. Late November 2023.
We were made aware recently of what's going on with Media Matters. As you probably know, fairly liberal, pro-democratic organization, which is fine.
No, is it fine?
But they are trying to manipulate, it looks like they're trying to manipulate the platform of X, formerly known as Twitter.
Really?
To make it look like they're racist, and they tried to tie those racist ads that were created to some.
I remember this, yes. This was Media Matters pointing out that neo-Nazis are monetized on Twitter, and basically they're like a bunch of ads from like Disney and stuff that are running next to neo-Nazis talking about loving Hitler and stuff. Yeah. That was an advertiser boycott that they kind of led, if you will.
The major advertisers on Twitter to hurt their business. Obviously, that affects consumers, and that's what we're looking into as a matter of law.
What, people can't point out that neo-Nazis are spreading their nonsense next to Disney advertisements? Disney doesn't have a right to know that? Are you shitting me? He's talking about consumers because the Attorney General is solely focused on protecting consumers from like scams and stuff. You know, there was this scam in the egg industry, Big Egg, believe it or not. I'm dead serious. The eggs in the United States basically all come from like 3 companies, 3 farms. And these farms all made a deal with each other to kill their chickens early and to destroy their eggs to artificially inflate the price of eggs. It was a full-blown economic manipulation scam that they were running. That's the kind of that the Attorney General should be investigating. In fact, I think that that's from Texas. I think that specific thing I'm talking about happened in Texas. I could be wrong on that. Why isn't he looking into that? Why is he investigating a media organization pointing out that neo-Nazis are talking about neo-Nazi stuff while Disney ads are running next to it? Why is he focused on that?
That's what we're looking into as a matter of law. Have they violated our fraud laws, and have they violated some laws as it relates to being a nonprofit?
So how could they possibly violate laws about nonprofit or fraud laws? What? They're reporting on neo-Nazis on this website, and that's violating fraud laws? Of course it's not. Even Ken Paxton doesn't believe that. It's a scare tactic. You do something that Ken Paxton doesn't like, you come after him, or you come after his friends, he will come after you.
So, you know, this is an important measure that you're taking here.
It's really not.
So is it a civil investigation?
That's all that the Attorney General can do, a civil investigation. Prosecutors would have to handle it on a local level if there were going to be prosecutions. And there are federal prosecutions too, but the Attorney General can investigate and fine companies for taking advantage of things or whatever.
Is it a criminal investigation? Is it the intent to sue? Walk us through some of the specifics.
So right now it's a civil investigation. I don't have the authority as Attorney General to do criminal investigations. That would be up to local district attorneys, which I wouldn't even believe that they would even start looking into this. But
Because it's bullshit. What criminal case could there possibly be for a media company reporting on something? This is insane.
hopefully some of them will. But we're looking at this.
He wants that. He wants criminal investigations into just like a newspaper for reporting on something.
Looking into this, but hopefully some of them will. But we're looking at the civil side, and we have two angles. We have the nonprofit angle because we're responsible as the Attorney General's office for overseeing charities, not necessarily helping them. We're supposed to make sure that they treat people the way they're supposed to treat them as charities. And second, we have the ability to look at corporations if they commit fraud. It's one of the four things that I'm directed by the state constitution to make sure that corporations that commit fraud are held accountable. So right now, we're just at the very beginning stages of looking at both of those issues.
No, I love it. And it's about time that we start to, look into these massive organizations. Ken, Media Matters has come after us. I bet Media Matters came after you. Ken, I think you would find this interesting. They came after our show very hard when we were telling our audience to contact members of the Texas legislature.
Okay, I don't know what he's talking about, but yeah, that's what the media does. They report on things. Are you shitting me right now? And you want to come after this media arm to attack them or whatever? What happened to freedom of the press? I thought that's what this country is built on.
Support of you. Media Matters is writing all these articles about us. They got nothing better to do. So I want to continue on this.
They've got nothing better to do than to report the news.
You have some other really major announcements, but I want to just kind of close the Media Matters. The Media Matters hit job that they did on X got several major companies to drop ads on X. So theoretically, Ken, if Media Matters indeed created something fraudulently, there are material damages here that...
How could they have possibly created something fraudulently? What are you talking about?
Could be proven. I mean, X could say, hey, we lost $60 million in ad revenue because of this sort of...
They literally showed screenshots of Nazis talking about loving Hitler next to advertisements of somebody. I don't remember who it was. Disney or Netflix, maybe? I don't remember. What is he even talking about? And besides all of that, I don't think that would even be in the purview of the Attorney General. I'm not sure. He's inserting himself where he doesn't belong.
Court.
Yeah, well, one, we can take away if we find that they violated state law and it's extreme, we can take away their ability to do business in Texas, so they wouldn't be able to operate here. Secondly, another measure was to go after them for any type of damages, and those are damages to consumers because if they are affecting companies and they are affecting consumers' belief about those companies, obviously there are damages involved, and we have a right as the state of Texas to go after those damages.
Absolute joke. So he's as corrupt as they come is the point. Let me just read through this article real fast. This is on the Friendly Atheist website, and I want to talk a little bit about his impeachment if we have a moment. Texas Attorney General Ken Paxton sues Christian ministry that helps the homeless. This is November 29th, 2024. Texas Attorney General Ken Paxton, a wildly cruel and corrupt Christian nationalist who was impeached by House Republicans last year, but kept his job thanks to the more MAGA Senate Republicans, is suing a homeless shelter for operating a taxpayer-funded drug paraphernalia giveaway next to an elementary school. When he says taxpayer-funded, I believe what he means is just like every other nonprofit organization, they don't have to pay taxes because they provide a public good. In the same way that churches don't have to pay taxes for the exact same reasons. They're the same schedule in the code and everything. They don't have to pay taxes because they're providing a good. So all of the money that they'd pay to taxes, they put it into charitable work. And as a result, they're heavily regulated. They've got federal and state level regulators breathing down their necks 24/7 practically. So the point is, that's what he means when he says taxpayer funded. He's not saying that they get all of their money from, the government. He means that they're funded in the exact same way that a church is funded. And he says they're operating a taxpayer-funded drug paraphernalia giveaway next to an elementary school, okay? He claims the Sunrise Homeless Navigation Center is a magnet for drugs and crime. By the way, I don't know where we're leading with this, so let me just put it on record. Needle exchange programs, I assume, is probably what he's talking about. Those are actually necessary and helpful. West Virginia, one of the most conservative states in the country, solidly red. Every district voted for Trump in 2016 and 2020 and 2024, I believe. They had a hepatitis C outbreak in Huntington, West Virginia, and they had to deal with that outbreak by starting a needle exchange program. You bring in dirty needles, they give you clean ones. No questions asked. You just come in and you do it and you leave. That cut down on the health emergency that Huntington was suffering, which means that it costs taxpayers less money because people were on Medicaid or Medicare and going to the hospital and getting treatment for hepatitis C, hundreds of thousands of dollars it costs per person, among other things. More people dying means a drain on the economy and everything else. Huntington, though they are very conservative, instituted a needle exchange program because that's how you deal with certain problems. I assume that's what he's talking about here. He claims the Sunrise Homeless Navigation Center is a magnet for drugs and crime, largely due to the syringe distribution service offered by the location. And if he succeeds in court, the shelter will shut down. Yep, that's what I thought. Yeah, needle exchanges are important. It's an important method of preventing the spread of illness, especially in areas that have like an HIV epidemic or something. It's extremely important to have needles available to people. What's interesting about this lawsuit, though, is that Paxton is effectively suing a Christian ministry for helping unhoused people, and the ministry plans to respond to the threat by saying they have a religious right to assist others. I love it. Yeah, this is definitely going to get Ken Paxton into heaven, right? For sure. This will get him there. All right, I'm just going to read like the bolded portions here. This is from the church, like the ministry's statement. Churches are protected under the First Amendment, the U.S. Religious Land Use and Institutionalized Persons Act, and also the Texas Religious Freedom Restoration Act. Thankfully, the First Amendment, federal law, and state law protect churches that serve people experiencing homelessness across our country, even when governments attempt to restrict their work. End quote. That's their statement. This is back to Hemant Mehta. To put all this another way, a Christian nationalist with power is trying to shut down a church's ministry that wants to help the least of these, quote unquote, while inadvertently highlighting a problem that Republicans exacerbated. Yet they made this worse. Republicans always seem to make these problems worse. My grandma, deeply good woman, just one of the best people that I've ever met in my life. She was a left-leaning person. She came from a town that was a sundown town. The KKK ran it. She didn't see a black person until she's like 20-something years old. And despite all of that, she, throughout the 1960s, through the civil rights protests and everything, supported the black community through all of it. Good person, deeply good person. But she still used to say, you don't want to take, or you want to stop taking drugs and just don't bend your elbow. Don't bend your elbow so you can't put it in your mouth, Just keep your elbows straight, you'll be fine. So how the f*** am I supposed to eat? Anyway, this kind of basic, quote-unquote, common sense, bottom-of-the-barrel analysis on drug treatment doesn't lead to solutions. It doesn't help anything or anybody. It gets more people killed. And this is kind of the Republican approach. Again, my grandma, I don't want to like slander her. She's a good person. She's a Democrat and, fought for justice all the way. And if I just sat down and explained it to her, then she would have agreed with me. But this is, Ken Paxton's kind of approach on this is just built on idiocy, ignorance, and bigotry. That's it. To put all this another way, a Christian nationalist with power is trying to shut down a church's ministry that wants to help the least of these while inadvertently highlighting a problem that Republicans exacerbated. The Houston Chronicle points out that Sunrise Community Church is part of the Reformed Church in America, a generally liberal denomination within the Protestant faith. Interesting, Reformed Church. In Germany, for the past few hundred years, there have been two main denominations. There's the Reformed Church and the Lutheran Church. And then there's the United Church, which is where Lutherans and Reformed Church members kind of joined together. Anyway, Reformed Church is the predecessor to Presbyterian. They believe in predestination. Like, you're born to fulfill the role that you were supposed to fulfill, and God has a plan for everybody that's already laid out, and nothing that you do really matters ultimately because it's just going to play out the way that he wanted it to. Anyway, that's kind of the defining feature of Calvinism, of the Reformed Church. Anyway, back to Hemant Mehta. There's no way to sugarcoat the problem. As the lawsuit notes, the unhoused people are urinating, defecating, fornicating, fighting, and leaving needles in the area, an area which is right next to Joslin Elementary School. The Austin City Council has given Sunrise over $2.5 million to do its work since 2021. That's why Paxton wants to shut it all down. I think this is a statement from Paxton. In Sunrise's own words, Sunrise has converted the area into a steady home base for this dangerous drug-addled homeless population. The result is predictable and devastating for the local community. All right. Well, here's the thing. Elementary schools are everywhere. There is like literally not one place that you can set up shop where there won't be an elementary school somewhere nearby. I mean, schools, generally, at least, are all over the place. They're in every district. And what's more, there are homeless people everywhere too. That's part of society. It doesn't have to be, but it is. So I'm not sure like what Paxton wants to do here. It's like the people who create hostile architecture, you know, where they put like arms on every bench so that people can't like lay down on it, and they put spikes under bridges so that they can't sleep under bridges or anything. What are these people supposed to do? They have no other option. They're literally sleeping under a bridge, okay? What do you expect them to do now? You're just making their lives harder. They're already difficult. They're already at bottom, at zero. And you want to bring them into the negatives now, seemingly. Says here, Paxton says the ministry has enriched itself with the public money, but there's no evidence of the religious leaders getting wealthy off this project or the institution not using the money appropriately. All right, so he's just like spreading lies about him then. He's just claiming that they're doing something that they're not so that he can justify an investigation. By the way, Paxton is the same person, I believe, that requested a list of all trans what was it? A list of all trans patients from a hospital from the beginning of time, I believe, and had basically no justification for it. Like, there was no reason to request that list. Why would he need that? That's disturbing. Creating lists like that is actually how things started in Germany, or that was like a part of the equation at the very least. He also claims the ministry seems to tolerate the drug use by offering syringes, but there's an explanation for that. If people are struggling with substance abuse, they're not magically going to stop doing drugs. Yeah, this is what I was saying. They'll find a way to get them, and they'll use whatever needles they can get their hands on to inject those drugs into their bodies, hurting themselves even more and possibly hurting others indirectly due to the spread of diseases. Yeah, absolutely. Needle exchanges are necessary. And when a city or when a government, a county or whatever deals with that, they know that. They come to that conclusion. Doesn't matter how right-wing this government is, they will recognize that this problem has to be dealt with somehow. There are basically two options. This is the bottom line. You have to do something about this problem. So governments will go one of two ways. Either they'll create a needle exchange program and an educational program to try to educate kids when they're young about not doing drugs and things like that. Prevention programs and recovery networks and all that. Either government will create all of that infrastructure, or they will do what Duterte did in the Philippines and just tell cops to kill drug addicts and or dealers. Just kill them. Just pull the trigger. You see somebody dealing drugs, kill them. The government inevitably has to pick one of those two, and it's not going to happen in the United States, obviously. So inevitably, as governments deal with, or as local communities deal with more and more drug use, Texas is going to expand their social safety nets, their needle exchange programs, their infrastructures, or whatever's. And Ken Paxton is trying to prevent that. I don't know what the point is here. Like, what's he trying to accomplish? They'll find a way to get them, and they'll use whatever needles they can get their hands on to inject those drugs into their bodies, hurting themselves even more and possibly hurting others indirectly due to the spread of diseases. By offering people sterile needles, as the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention notes, it can reduce the risk of infection and prevent outbreaks. Programs like these are proven and effective. More importantly, they do not encourage drug use. It's about harm reduction. The abysmal reporting about this lawsuit by local news outlets doesn't mention any of this. Really? Interesting. Local news outlets, huh? KView. Texas AG sues South Austin Homeless Center, claims it's fueling crime and endangering kids. Interesting. Huh. Well, I would have to spend more time reading through it, but yeah, I'll trust him and Meta's take on that. This is a key takeaway from the lawsuit. Paxton spends dozens of pages describing all the ways people in the community are disturbed by the people serviced by Sunrise, but he has no plan B to help them out. He wants to shut down the Christian ministry without offering any kind of alternative. The unhoused people aren't going away. They'll just find different places to go, but with even fewer resources than they have right now thanks to Sunrise. Again, these problems permeate all of society. They affect everybody in society, whether you're a drug addict, a drug user, or not. More drug use in a society causes significantly more problems. Higher rate of break-ins, higher amount of disease spreading. You know, there's like an epidemic, like in Huntington, there was the hepatitis C epidemic. These things happen, and you must deal with them as a government. You must. This is literally your job. Rather than helping those victims himself, Paxton wants to punish the people taking on that role. His party is no different. Texas Republicans aren't releasing any policy plan to increase affordable housing or give those unhoused people access to licensed social workers and potential jobs. They just want them to disappear. If they die from lack of help, the Republicans don't care. But the ministry does. That's what they said in the response to the lawsuit. Here's a quote from the response from the ministry. I'm just reading the bolded parts. It's regrettable that the Attorney General Paxton took this route, especially during the week of Thanksgiving, but Sunrise intends to keep offering services to people in our community who need them. As the largest provider of homeless services in Travis County, Sunrise has helped more than 4,275 people move into safe, supportive housing. Sunrise serves thousands of people each year through its digital call center, outreach efforts, housing programs, and in-person services. These critical resources support a diverse population, including many families with young children, who are among the fastest growing segments of Austin's homeless population. Wow, that's rough. That's from Sunrise, the organization, I guess. This is Hemant Mehta. If the Republicans running the state government want to give the city enough funding to open new shelters away from local schools, that'd be one thing. That's not the case here. He wants to shut down this one and let city officials in this relatively blue part of the state figure it out from there. 2 new navigation center locations have been proposed, but there's no timeline for when they'll be up and running. Interesting. The lawsuit will only make the homeless crisis worse as a result of Republican intervention, and Republicans will inevitably blame Democrats when the problem gets worse. Oh yeah, that's the playbook, of course. Yeah, anyway, let me know what you think about it in the comments. That's kind of par for the course with Ken Paxton. He's a moral monster, complete scumbag, corrupt as they come, and willing to do whatever. Do whatever it takes to maintain power, to further his or his political allies' goals, or whatever. He doesn't care. Tell me what you think in the comments.